Lagos State. Mr. Dara is also a one-time National Organizing Secretary, Middle Belt Forum 2004 to 2012. He was also the National Secretary, Middle Belt Forum 2012 to 2017. And also, Mr. Dara is a former presidential candidate of the Alliance for Social Democrats in 2019. Once again, Mr. Dara, it's a pleasure to have you on Insight.
It's really delightful to be here.
All right, you can join our live stream on YouTube. You type in Insight and you will be part of this show wherever you are on the face of planet Earth. You can also listen to us online on www.citizenfm.ng. And not forgetting that you can follow us on our social media platforms, 3 of them on Facebook at Citizen FM Abuja, on Instagram at Citizen FM 937, and also on X at Citizen FM 937. So that's how it's going to be in the next 45 minutes or thereabout. We will be talking to Mr. John Dara and perhaps having his takes on some of the issues happening in Nigeria. Once again, welcome to Insights. My name is Lawrence Omoite. Mr. Dara, let's start this way. It's been 26 years of return to civil rule since 1999, and also 2 years of the current administration led by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. What would be your general assessment of first our return to civil rule and the 2 years of the President Bola Ahmed administration?
I think Nigerians have every reason to congratulate themselves for sustaining democracy for 26 years. It's the longest season of democracy we've had since independence. And it's also to show that the military has become more professional, more focused on their core responsibility rather than dabbling into politics. We believe that Nigeria is right now on the trajectory that will guarantee that we are among the leading nations of the world. But what is even more remarkable is the momentous changes we are witnessing in the last 2 years. You know, Nigerians have been focusing on the immediate discomfort of the policies. But when you look at the bigger picture, you begin to appreciate that this is really the beginning of the greatness of this nation. You know, I was a resource person at Vision 2010.
I was coming to that, yeah.
And the focus is on where we were and where we ought to be, and what we need to do to get to where we ought to be. Unfortunately, previous administrations did not have the courage to take the decisions that will enable us to get to where we ought to be. There has been consensus, elite consensus in Nigeria about the need to remove subsidy from petroleum products. There has been concession to allow our currency to be, the value of our currency to be determined by market forces. Unfortunately, whenever the decision is taken, there will be pressure from vested interest, to borrow the expression from Emir Sanusi Lamido. Vested interest will put pressure on government and they will back down from these laudable policies. But what we have seen in the last 2 years is that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has strong character. He has strong convictions, and he's been running an administration based on principles rather than pandering to interest groups for political expediency. Now, what is the fallout. Yeah, you remember in the days of Obasanjo's, as military head of state, austerity measures, there was pain. And then there was complaint, and he backed down. In the days of President Babangida's structural adjustment program,
SAP,
Obasanjo was criticizing the government that the SAP had no human face. And then IBB2 backed down. And I was privileged to ask him why. He said, John, if you don't, once there is a public outcry, you are inviting a coup d'etat. And that was it. They backed down. I remember in the early days of this administration, Comrade Adams Oshimole said, look, Tinubu, these your policies, which you refuse to back down, which you are determined to sustain, could make you a one-term president. But it shows that Tinubu is not the traditional politician who is just concerned about re-election. He has continued along this path. But the delightful surprise that will happen to Tinubu is that, contrary to the assumption that populist policies guarantees re-election, these tough measures will not only facilitate his re-election, it will also move Nigeria to a higher level. And so for me, I think we are right on course for the first time in a long while.
All right, let's just follow up from that. From looking at the general assessment of the President Tinubu's administration, let's look at sectoral issues. Let's start with the legislature, for example. This is the only arm of government that indicates whether a government is democratic or not, because during military we have the executive and to some extent the judiciary. So let's look at the legislature. As someone who's been around for a long while, what would be your assessment of the legislative arm of government in terms of the recruitment tradition, the recruitment policy, talking about the quality of lawmakers, talking about the bills, the discussions, and so many general things relating to the legislative arm of government?
Well, let me first of all say that it is part of the Tinubu sagacity that he has been able to relate well to the legislative arm, to the extent that some people are wrongly labeling them as a rubber stamp legislature, but that, it's a cooperative legislature, not confrontational legislature. Many people get more excitement when the legislative arm is in confrontation with the executive.
Up in arms.
But when two elephants fight, it is the grass that gets hurt. So in this dispensation...
Okay, just a minute, Mr. Dara. I think there's a caller here who is in a hurry to talk to you. Hello? Okay, I think, let's see. I think, okay, we missed that. Well, maybe you could just hold on for another 20 minutes. By 10:30, we will open the phone line. So let's just have some level of discussion.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, please, sir.
So the legislature today is working in harmony with the executive. It's not a negative thing. It's actually a positive thing. And it's also the aspiration of every president to have and every governor to have a cooperative legislative arm. That Tinubu has achieved it. Only the enemies of progress will be unhappy with that. Now, there are things the legislature are doing that may make us feel a little uncomfortable. I think, for instance, that the Natasha Apoti issue is an unnecessary distraction. It doesn't take anything for the leadership to orchestrate a settlement and return to status quo ante, and we move on. But for as long as they keep allowing it to fester, it has a negative effect on the image of the National Assembly. So in my opinion, they should resolve that matter and put it behind them and move forward. There are complaints about too much pampering of the legislature. It didn't start with this administration. I was part of the government of President Obasanjo, and in fact, the bloated emoluments of the National Assembly started from that time. And I actually was privileged to ask questions about it. And I was told that it is to prevent corruption in the National Assembly. If they are well remunerated, then they will focus on their work. They will not be demanding for money before they get things done. Unfortunately, it may not have worked the way it was intended to be. But I think we can improve on the ethics and remuneration of the National Assembly. The constituency projects is generally misunderstood by the public. Every lawmaker who wants to get elected wants to be able to point to his constituency. These are the projects that are attracted to this constituency. And that's what is meant by constituency project. It does not mean that the money for that project is given to the lawmakers. It means the lawmaker ensures it is budgeted for and delivered to his constituency. But again, the public, they are talking, billions is into constituency project and is padding of the. That I think is a distortion of what is there. I'm not their PR man. Unfortunately, they themselves they carry on with such flamboyance that people tend to believe all the negative things.
Okay, Mrs. Let me come in there. In the area of the constituency project, there are two things I want us to look at. Number one, well, on paper, you're correct that the lawmakers just simply need to identify the project and then the executive arm of government execute the project. But we've been inundated with reports of corruption, collusion between the executive arm and the legislative arm. Sometimes companies belonging to the lawmakers are the one who carry out this project and so many other things. That's part one. Then part two, there are some people who ask, what is the business of a lawmaker in attracting projects? These are simply executive functions.
Well, lobbying is part of the culture of legislative arm of government. We lobby them to pass laws that favor us. They also lobby executive arm and others to do things that will favor them, so that it earns them boasting rights in their constituency. I think the part that we must stop is where the lawmaker is now pressurizing the executive to award the contract to a company in which he has vested interest. That is not his business, and we should stop that nonsense. Corruption in Nigeria is not something we cannot reduce. But we condone it, we take it as normal. And that is why it's festering. I believe that government need to make everyone to sit up. Now, ironically, the approach of President Tinubu has been to see how they can prevent corruption rather than fighting or going after the corrupt elements and punishing. But I think it must all be combined together. EFCC will say, oh, we have jailed many people in this dispensation and more than ever before. We would like to see some politicians, some top civil servants, because the corruption in the civil service is bigger than most people are aware of. And I think we need to deal with it in such a way that it will restore credibility, not only among the citizenry, but even international investors. But we're on course. We are making progress, but not fast enough, not good enough.
All right, before we go on, I want us to talk about some, maybe we say personal issues relating to it. I remember that very interesting election in Lagos State, the 1992-93 election, governorship election, where we had the eventual winner, Chief Michael Otedola. This was a candidate that was not given any chance in that election for a lot of Nigerians who were old enough then in Lagos. But you were one of the very few people who believed in Chief Otedola that time. How did you do it? What happened?
Well, my background is what we call integrated marketing communications. I was MD of an advertising and PR company, Prime Media Limited, when Sir Otedola approached me. He was a PR man himself. He was PR man for Mobil Oil. So he was advised by Archbishop Okogie to go and see John Dara. If you want to be governor, go and talk to John Dara. I can help you. And it will surprise people that even in 1999, for Tinubu to be governor, he also spoke to me and I did some things for him. So he told me, I said, look, it's doable. And like a professional, what I did is to first of all state the problems and highlight the disadvantages he has, and then came up with a strategy on how to overcome those disadvantages. So I wrote a campaign plan. He had a copy. Some of the party stalwarts had copies too. We followed it, including promoting conflicts in the opposition. People talk about his name being Ote, meaning crisis, dollar becoming wealth. But the truth is that the crisis didn't just happen. Okay, we didn't start it, but what we did is to put fuel to ensure and take full advantage of it in a systematic manner. In fact, we made it impossible for them to reconcile, unknown to them. And when the dust has settled, we also pulled the losing side,
faction of the losing side,
to collude and collaborate with us. The rest, as they say, is history. So any campaign can be managed where you don't lack the basic resources. And Otedola was not a wealthy man then, but he was a comfortable man. Then he had a printing press, which helped. So all the publications we needed to do for the campaign, we were just churning it out, good quality. I brought my advertising background to make sure everything was well designed. So his posters were outstanding. All other materials were good quality. The adverts in the media was, and then because of my PR background, I kept engaging the press. They were skeptic initially, but gradually I won over some of them. So it's really not magic or miracle. It's just good management. And that's why even for Obasanjo's campaign, I was brought on board to come and repeat the same thing, and it worked. Now, somebody has asked me, why is it that it has not worked for you? You are a presidential aspiration.
I was coming to that.
I had no money. I had no money.
I was coming
That's just it. I know what to do, but you must have money to be able to do the basic things.
Okay.
And the lesson in it is, without some money, some funding, you are not likely to win an election.
So
it's either your money or other people's money. You don't have it, sorry, you are not likely to win anywhere in the world.
If you knew this, why did you contest?
I was hoping that other people's money will flow in.
But it didn't.
It didn't flow in.
Okay, well, still talking about your time in the Otedola administration. Yes. You were a member of that government, kitchen cabinet, so to speak, very close to the governor.
That's right.
But you left barely 2 years. What happened?
I actually left after 1 year. When I had this arrogant belief that I do not need government to thrive. I do not need government job to thrive. I needed to get things done and be an agent of change. So the administration of Otedola was packaged to be a reformer, and I wanted him to do a number of changes. Unfortunately, the NI expressed frustration. Femi, his son, will come and say, you know, Baba is an old man. He may not be able to do things at that pace. So the first problem I had was the slow pace of governance. I felt if I was not careful, I would end up being part of what I saw would be a lackluster administration. Number two, there was a big campaign that I was not an indigene of Lagos, and I was already seen to be the man in charge, the man Friday, the man who was actually doing most of the work of governance, and that itself attracted some hostility. Then the governor was concerned about my safety, about my this. I was not bothered about that. I just wanted to get things done. So when I saw that the more I was struggling to get things moving, the more some people were putting their feet on the brakes. The governor was surprised when I walked to him. I said, I don't need this job. I don't need to work in this environment. Things need to move at a faster pace. Nigeria itself, not only Lagos, Nigeria has lost too much ground. We've been left behind by nations that were at par with us when we were at independence. Any government that will bring about desirable changes must move at a fast pace. Changes must be consistently followed through. I like the consistency and the determination to follow through with policy in this administration, but I feel that the pace needs to be faster.
Okay, still on that, you were also very close to the late Belshore MKO Abiola. In fact, your relationship blossomed for several years. Tell us about that too.
It's very interesting. I was not involved in MKO's campaign because, one, I was in NRC, but we discussed extensively. In fact, many times late in the night, he would call me, John, come over, and we'll brainstorm on what needed to be done and all that. But I'm sorry to say, I was skeptic about the sincerity of the military to hand over to him. Because he believed he was the chosen one. And I told him I had my doubts. So I was not that involved. except as a man who goes like Nicodemus in the night to discuss with MKO himself. Unfortunately, it ended the way it was. But beyond politics, MKO to me was a visionary leader, a trailblazer. He wanted to develop shipping. He wanted to, he caused a revolution in the media with Concord and all that. He was into the airline industry, Concord Air.
Agriculture.
He was into
sports.
Agriculture. He was
sports.
So he was a man who wanted Nigeria to move fast. I share with him this impatience to see Nigeria take its rightful position, and there was never a dull moment whenever we are brainstorming and exchanging ideas. He introduced me to Governor Lawrence Wider of Virginia State, the first black man to be governor in U.S. at that time. And the way he presented me to that governor, I was almost in tears. He spoke so highly of me. But that is part of our life. MKO is gone, but his legacy will remain.
All right, if you're just joining us, it's Insight on Citizen 93.7 FM, and my guest is John Dara, a politician, a PR expert, and so many, and also a statesman. By the way, I forgot. Happy birthday, Mr. Dara.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I was very moved when I read Mr. President's tribute to you on your birthday.
I felt greatly honored.
All right, so you can join us. This is the time that the phone lines are open now. You can call us on 0903 2229797, and you can call us on 0818 2222205. That's 0903 2229797 or 0818 2222205. And don't forget that you can also join us on our live stream on YouTube. Just type in Insight and you will be part of the show. You can also follow us on our social media platforms, on Facebook at Citizen FM Abuja, on Instagram at Citizen FM 937, and also on X at Citizen FM 937. We'll take a short break now, and Insight will return in a moment. Please don't go away. Thank you for staying tuned. It's still Insight on Citizen FM 93.7 here in Abuja. My guest is John Dara, a public relations expert and also a politician. And we are talking about Nigeria and Nigerians, talking about the history of Nigeria, talking about the current realities in Nigeria. Mr. Dara, thank you for staying tuned, sir.
Thank you.
All right, let's look at this also. I want us to look at the current political realignments in the country. But before that, I'm looking at this background. Your role as a resource person in the 1988 Constituent Assembly, and you're also a member of the Vision 2010 Committee, and even a delegate at the 2005 National Political Reform Conference and the 2014 National Conference. So, with all this experience, what do you think it's happening in Nigeria in terms of the ongoing political realignments now?
Well, politicians will always be politicians. My concern is that we tend to focus too much on politics and less on development. The realignment is a fulfillment of the prophecy of Chief Awolowo. He had always foreseen a situation where progressive forces will eventually come together and dominate the polity of the country. You know, I used to be the secretary for policy and programs of the Aoist movement. As a young man, I worked closely with late Otegbeye and my former governor, Chief CEO Adebayo. We were in that committee together, and I was the secretary. I say this, that the realignment is not a negative development. However, the process is embarrassing. You are elected on the platform of one party, and you just walk across. We are not even in a parliamentary system where you talk about cross-carpeting. You just walk across without any sense of responsibility. I think we need to strengthen the law that once you are elected on one platform, if you want to change your platform, your political party, you resign the office into which you are elected first. And then you can go. I mean, there's freedom of association. But you cannot carry the mandate of one party and carry it to another party with the kind of impunity we see now. Many people will not remember that it was actually PDP that started it. I saw Shobowale writing about it recently. It was Wabi Dozumu who was the first to cross carpet like that. And PDP was celebrating it. And several others also followed and crossed into PDP when it was the ruling party. Now, they have themselves to blame for setting that kind of precedence. But I think the time has come for Nigeria to have a clear policy that when you are elected on the platform of one party, if you want to move to another party, you've got to resign your position.
Do you really think this will be possible to effect this change? Because the lawmakers are politicians too.
The lawmakers can make it possible. They've already moved. They've already moved. In fact, the present administration has a chance to effect far-reaching reforms, and President Tinubu has the character. That's why I feel that if we re-elect him in the second term, it will be a revolution. Believe me. He's courteous now because he needs to get re-elected. But once he no longer has the need to bother about election, he will be revolutionary. And I think that's why he deserves to be given a second chance.
All right, it's still Insight on Citizen 93.7 FM. Yes, the numbers are open now. The lines are open 0903 2229 797 or 0818 2222205. And my guest is Mr. John Dara, who is a former presidential candidate. Mr. John Dara, let's talk about your presidential ambition. In 2019, you actually wanted to become the president of Nigeria. What was the inspiration?
Well, you talked about my having been part of several national conferences.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm quite familiar with what needed to be done to make this country great. I wasn't just a delegate. To borrow the title conferred on me by Professor Oloyede, he used to call me super delegate because I was a pacemaker, a pace setter in the conferences. Because I'm already familiar with how it works. Many delegates are coming for the first timers. So I was always one step ahead in ensuring that we move in the right direction. So I know what needed to be done. And again, to be sincere, that's why I have no problem at all with policies of the present administration. These are the things that we decided needed to be done. Now, the areas where they are not yet delivering, take agriculture for instance. It's a low-hanging fruit. Oh, people say it's because of banditry that, forget about. Any of the geopolitical zones in Nigeria can feed Nigeria. The whole of southern Nigeria can feed the whole of Nigeria. By the time you join most of the middle belt, Nigeria will have surplus. If we solve our security problems in the Sahelian zone, then we will be awash with food, exporting food around the world. That's what ought to be, because we are blessed with so much arable land. I believe that even now, government ought to achieve much more in agriculture than they are doing now. And a lot of the time, government fail because they just throw money at programs, and then people are waiting to divert the money, and you get less result. I think we need to pay more attention to agriculture and food security than we are doing now. So I wanted to be president because I have a clear vision of what needed to be done in the area of human capital development, what needed to be done in infrastructure development, what needed to be done in economic development. I love the diversification of the economy that the present administration is doing. Marine economy, agriculture, the cultural area, the industry that can be created around culture and all
tourism.
That, and tourism. But how can you have proper tourism if the roads are not good? How can you have proper tourism if along the road you don't have motels, you don't have hotels, you can't, and if you don't have security? So there's a need for a holistic approach in solving our problem, and that's why I said we've lost too much ground. We ought to be in a hurry. The tempo is not high enough. I feel that we need to move a little faster. That was the kind of thing I wanted to do. And let me say this, that it wasn't just a theoretical dream. When I was in Lagos State, there were projects that they would tell me, oh, it will be 3 years before it is completed. I was aggressively pushing and supervising many of these things and discovered that they could finish in 6 months. They could finish in eight. Why should building a housing estate take 3 years? How long does it take to build a house? If you need to put more men and more material, put it. And we were getting things done fast. But even then, I was seen as too aggressive. I tell you this, government need to be working like machine, like clockwork. Efficiency is what makes a government impactful. And that was what I was going to bring to the table. Again, when I was in the Ministry of Defense, everyone knew my boss gave me a lot of freedom and empowered me. And in the process, I would say, this can be done faster. And they would tell me, well, this is how we do it. I said, no, I'm not concerned about how you do it.
You also stepped on toes.
I stepped on so many toes that people were afraid for my life. I said, John, don't you think they can kill you? I said, how? For what? For doing the right things? So there were complaints that I'm stubborn, I'm this, but that's what I admire in Tinubu, he's stubborn. So let's get things done and move. That is why, for me now, I feel I'm too old now. honestly. At 70, I just want to enjoy. That's why I'm enjoying being pastor. I was doing pastoral work part-time in the past. Now I do it full-time. So whether I'm in government or I'm not in government is immaterial. There are many ways I will continue to share my thoughts, my ideas. I will write books very soon. So I have plenty of time in my hands, and thank God for good health.
Okay, Mr. Dara, one of the takeaway from what you've just said now is that there is so much to be done in the country.
Oh, yes.
But how come a lot of the time we are discussing the situation in Nigeria, we seem to focus our attention only on the federal government? The states, what about the state? There's been a lot of devolution of more powers to the states now, and also more finances going to the states now.
Well, I don't believe that there is even enough finances going to the states. By the time we have state police, the states will need a lot of money, and we should have state police. In fact, we should have local government police. There should be no ungoverned spaces in Nigeria, so that bandits, terrorists have no room to operate. And therefore, the existing revenue sharing formula should be changed in favor of the states.
More money
To the states. But and even more money to what we call the producing areas. I didn't want to say oil because we are talking about derivation, includes solid mineral as well. And because every state has something to bring to the table, we should encourage more productivity and reward it with higher allocation for derivation, more than the current 13%. In fact, the Constitution provided that we should have reviewed it long time ago. So I think, I believe in more money for the states. However, many governors think the more money comes, the more they can divert it for self-aggrandizement, for frivolous things. And in federalism, the president cannot really breathe down the neck of governors, unlike in the military. However, I believe that constructive engagement, many governors are not enlightened enough, they are not visionary enough to know what can be done to transform their states. So constructive engagement organized by the federal government can be done without appearing to be overbearing. And then the governors will find out, oh, this is good. Take agriculture. There is no reason why every state will not be involved in specific crop production, meeting targets, and we share resources in order to make sure that agriculture is actually
that it has a comparative advantage.
Look, one of the most exciting projects America did for themselves years ago, which they are trying to revive similar things now, was the interstate highway under General Eisenhower when he was president. The states were involved in partnership with the federal government. What they did is that any portion of the roads passing through your state, you contribute a percentage to financing it. And so everyone was, so the states did not have loose money to throw around or to be stealing. No, there were so many projects they were doing in collaboration, in partnership with the federal government. I think that's what we should be doing.
All right, time, we are gradually winding down, Mr. Dara. But let's go back to where we ought to have started from.